Now that Epic Universe has been open for a few months over there at Universal Orlando, I think it's about time to tell you some new tips and tricks and observations that we've picked up during our most recent visit. Hey everybody, it's AJ for Disney Food Vlog. The more we visit Epic Universe, the more we learn. So my scriptwriter Bria and I just went back to this brand new Universal Orlando park just a week or so ago and ended the day with lots of memories and tons of notes on our phones. So we could keep track of what new things we wanted to tell you guys about before your first or next visit too. Number 1, don't just arrive early to early admission. Arrive early. If you stay at one of the Universal Orlando hotels, you'll have the chance to use their early theme park admission perk, which lets you enter select parks on certain days up to an hour before the parks officially open. And that goes for Epic Universe too. A great perk, right? I mean, of course I want a full hour of extra time in a brand new park. But if you really want to get your full hour's worth out of early admission, and you're not staying at Helios Grand Hotel, which has a dedicated entrance straight into the park, then you're probably going to want to arrive at the front gate maybe 45-ish minutes before early admission starts up for the day. I say this because during my last trip to Epic, I decided to use early admission and I arrived like 20 to 30 minutes until, and I still didn't get through the tap style until 15 minutes after early admission began. Remember, you're not the only person using this early admission perk. Lots of folks are going to be scrambling to get through the front gate as early as they can. And while there are a whole bunch of tap style lines to help move things along quickly, there's still a security system where you'll have to walk through a metal detector and put your loose articles in bins, airport style, that you're going to have to cross through first. And that could slow things down significantly. Now, even though I didn't make it through security and the tap style until 15 minutes after early admission began, that still gave me a 45-minute head start, which, is more than you're going to get at Disney World, so it all worked out. That being said, if you're looking to use that full hour of early admission time, the earlier you can get to the Epic front gates and ahead of the morning crowds, the better. This also means you're going to want to plan your bus ride from the other Universal hotels that are not part of the Epic Universe bubble accordingly, since you will have to factor in both the bus stop wait and the 15 to 20-ish minutes of travel time that it takes to get from point A to point B. Next is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. You know what was worth the investment during my Epic Universe visit? Refillable mugs. The soda goblin in me loves these things. I wish Disney World had these so badly. For about $19 per cup or less if you purchase multiple refillable mugs at a time, Universal Orlando's refillable cups will allow you to fill up on fountain drinks all over the parks all day long. Almost anywhere that offers fountain sodas will let you refill your mug, even in a Coca-Cola Freestyle machine, especially in a Coca-Cola Freestyle machine. During my last Epic visit, there was a 50-50 chance that my fellow team members could find me at a Freestyle machine filling up. Not a lie. So these refillable mugs work the exact opposite way of Disney World's refillable mugs. At Disney World, refillable mugs work at the Disney-owned hotels only, but not inside the parks. Meanwhile, Universal's refillable mugs work at their parks only, but not at their hotels. That being said, some Universal hotels do offer hotel-only refillable mug options that you might want to look into as well, but that's a lot of refillable mugs to keep track of. But get this, for about $12, you can reactivate your Universal refillable mug for future visits and uses. So if you're someone who plans to arrive in the parks early, stay all day, and sip on soda and Powerade and tea constantly the whole time, like me, you'll probably find these to be a really good value, like I do. Quick warning though, watch out for your refillable mugs when you're riding Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry. I say this because 2 out of the 3 times I've actually ridden this ride, someone's completely filled to the brim refillable mug has been jostled over and spilled everywhere on the elevator floor. And that's because there's no locker system for Battle at the Ministry. You just take your stuff with you and set it down at your feet. So you'll either want to make sure to gulp the remainder of your drink until it's bone dry, or you'll want to make sure that cup is securely between your shoes so it doesn't have the chance to topple over while you're out there zipping around on a wizarding elevator. Not staying at a Universal hotel this trip? That's okay. Honestly, I found that staying in Epic Universe until close was even more helpful than getting there before opening. Don't get me wrong, the early admission perk is still useful, but the problem is that only a few portals and rides are actually open during this time. These include Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, Yoshi's Adventure, Stardust Racers, Constellation Carousel, Monsters Unchained, The Frankenstein Experiment, and Curse of the Werewolf. By the time I got through the first park portal, Mario Kart was already sitting at a 2-hour wait. wait. I know, wild considering I only had a 15-minute delay, and Stardust Racers was already temporarily unavailable. Rides like Yoshi's Adventure and Constellation Carousel tend to not rack up the wait times quite like the others, so I didn't really think I needed to head towards them first. So I started my day at Monsters Unchained, which, as I've been learning, also doesn't really need a head start, since the lines for this dark ride tend to be some of the shortest that you'll see in the park. More on that later. However, when it was 2 hours before park closing, I was able to hop on back-to-back rides for some of the most popular park rides, which were only projecting 15 to 30 minutes wait by the end of the day. In just those last 2 hours, I was able to squeeze in one more ride on Monsters Unchained. This one usually has pretty manageable waits though, sitting at an average of 10 to 15 minutes in the mornings and staying pretty much the same once night falls. Get on Hiccup Swing gliders. In the morning, this one quickly shoots up to about a 60 to 90 minute wait shortly after it opens and stays around that realm before eventually dropping down to 15 to 30 minutes during the last couple hours of the day. Ride Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry, also more on this in just a second. There's a good chance that shortly after this one opens for the day too, it's going to be one of your highest waits all day long, sitting around 90 to 120 minutes on average. But post dinner time, we usually see this one start to drop to 20 to 45 minutes. And Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge. Again, kids love this one, so lots of folks gravitate toward it first thing, as in right after early entry begins. So it's not uncommon for Mario Kart to rack up 70, 90, 150 minute waits even within the first couple hours of the day. But in that last hour, this one might even be a walk-on for you, sitting at 5 to 15 minutes. But why did the lines dip down this drastically? Well, much like Disney World or any park really, people get tired and they want to go home, so they leave, and they do exactly that, especially when it's summer and the heat is just overwhelming. Plus, the most popular rides in Epic at the end of the day are going to be those Celestial Park rides like Stardust Racers and Constellation Carousel, which come alive with colorful lights after the sun sets. So as long as the weather's cooperating and you're not waiting in line for one of those other Celestial Park rides, you might find that the last bit of the night is going to help you accomplish way more than early admission even does. So in some of our recent Universal Orlando videos, I mentioned how overstimulating Super Nintendo World can be, and I'm not backtracking with that one. Last visit, I went up the escalator through the warp pipe, past Peach's castle, and exited into a world that, yet again, was a complete sensory overload. You got lots of sounds, and lots of effects, and lots of kids, and lots of colors, and lots of everything. This is not me saying this place isn't awesome. It is so cool to literally step inside a video game realm brought to life. But if you're like me and the sheer amount of sound and action happening around you is going to really mess with your head after a while, then you might want to make a return visit to this realm toward the end of the day. Yep, the animatronics are still going to be in full force, and yes, the music is still going to be at full volume, but much like I said before, people start to go back to their hotel room once the sun starts to set, and that's especially true for families with younger kids. So you're going to find this area a whole lot less crowded when you get here at night. Not to mention, once the sun goes down, the colors in Super Nintendo World kind of tone down a little bit too, and the heat isn't going to be playing a factor in the whole sensory nightmare nearly as much as before. At least not the debilitating sun, like just beating down on you. Now, if you're still nervous about potential overstimulation for someone in your group or for yourself while you're inside this portal, especially when it comes to sound, you may want to consider investing in some noise-canceling headphones before your trip, because this area is still worth checking out, even if I can usually only tolerate it for like an hour before I'm ready to escape to a much calmer Celestial Park again. Monsters Unchained might still freak out your kid. During some of our earlier Epic Universe videos on this channel, I mentioned that the scare factor of Monsters Unchained was about on a par with the scare factor you'd find in a ride like Dinosaur in Animal Kingdom. But I want to not necessarily retract that statement, but adjust it. I'd say the jump scare factor is about on par with what you'll see in Dinosaur. Like, you don't have to stress over this one being in your face and overly terrifying like a Halloween Horror Night house or anything, but animatronics-wise, these monsters are impressive and intimidating. They're giant, they're reaching out for you out of the ceiling, they're eating people. So, while Bria and I, who are both the least likely to enter any sort of scare zone willingly, still enjoyed this one because it wasn't as jump scary, I don't want to downplay how creepy this ride can be for the youngins, since I would have been scared of them as a young kid and as a super sensor. The squirt of blood you're splattered with from the werewolf, sorry, spoiler alert, would probably have sent me over the edge at that age. By the way, if you're looking for a comprehensive guide that you don't have to spend any money on for Epic Universe, we've got one of those that we'd be happy to send your way. Just scan the QR code you see on the screen right now, or click on the link in the video's description for disneyfoodblog.com/epic after this for a PDF that's chock full of Epic's rides, shows, restaurants, and shops. They always put out a sign that says Ministry of Magic is closing early. Okay, I'm gonna let Bria take over this point because she was able to test this experiment out for multiple nights in Epic Universe just recently.
All right, friends, let's talk about how you can gamble with your Wizarding World Day. When you get over to the Wizarding World portal, you may see signs around the area stating that the Battle at the Ministry ride is going to close early that day. And if you're like me, that's gonna make your heart skip a beat. Close early? Dude, I'm getting in line for that ride as soon as possible then, so I don't miss out. But here's what Epic really means when they put up that sign. Since Battle at the Ministry tends to be the most popular ride of the park, they don't want their Wizarding World team members having to work an extra 2 to 3 hours past closing time just to get the rest of the guests through the Battle at the Ministry line. So unlike most Epic Universe rides, where you can just get in line and get one last ride through right up until closing, Epic Universe will mark the Battle at the Ministry at capacity if they see their 2 hours until closing time and the ride is still sitting at a solid 120-minute wait. That being said, the first day my husband Ethan and I went to Epic, Battle at the Ministry never actually reached that capacity, so it waited to close until 30 minutes before the park was slated to close anyways. But since people scrambled to ride this one earlier on in the day, afraid that it would close before they got the chance to experience it, it was sitting at a 20-minute wait while the park still had 1 hour left to go. Would I wait and gamble on this strategy if Battle at the Ministry was my number one priority? No, probably not. Because again, this line could reach capacity and close a whole lot earlier. On the second day I was at Epic, the Battle at the Ministry line actually hit capacity hours before park closing since it was one of the only rides left open after all the storms came through. That being said, if Battle at the Ministry has a line that you just don't want to mess with, or you are hoping to catch one more re-ride on it before wrapping up your day, then keep an eye on the Universal Orlando app so you can find out if this early closure strategy is gonna work in your favor this time around.
So Bria just mentioned navigating Epic Universe during a storm, and I just want to add to that real quick with this next point. Storms in Epic can be a major bummer since the majority of Epic Universe's rides are outside. Any sign of heavy rain or lightning within a 30-mile radius is going to shut all of those down. The good news is that Epic Universe does have some really amazing shows you might want to prioritize while you're waiting for the storms to pass. Storms are also a good time to grab a meal from one of the portal's quick services or do a little shopping if you hadn't had the chance to do that already. But for the record, if you do get rained on before you go into one of these shows or shops or restaurants, prepare yourself for some really cold and crisp AC. Most of the time this AC is an absolute gift, but when you're standing inside an indoor queue like a soaking wet rat, you might be surprised to see goosebumps suddenly shoot up and down your arms. So pack ponchos and maybe a light jacket in your backpack if you're someone that gets easily cold. And since we're on this subject, I don't know what I was expecting when I heard Epic Universe would have 2 stage shows, but I sure wasn't expecting these. The 2 main stage shows that you can find in Epic Universe are the Untrainable Dragon in Isle of Berk and Le Cirque Canoe in the Wizarding World. Now, to be fair, I knew a little bit of what to expect with the Untrainable Dragon since that stage show already exists in the Universal Studios Park in Beijing, but even then, the level of puppetry and special effects still gets me giddy. Sure, the storyline is pretty simple, but the dragons featured during the show might as well have flown out of the How to Train Your Dragon films and onto the set. It is just eye candy over here. But if I had to choose just one show to prioritize, I'd probably go to Le Cirque Canoe. Now, I know that a lot of you might disagree, so please let me know in the comments which one you would choose. Both shows are incredible. Now, Bria told me that she likes Le Cirque Canoe even better than the Battle at the Ministry ride, but that's probably a hot take. I want to tell you all about this show, but it's so much better to go into this one blind. It is full of puppets, impressive circus acts, and a whole lot of, as cheesy as it sounds, magic. So quick tip, before you enter the Canoe Theater, you'll be funneled into a pre-show room first. Don't let this room make you nervous, even if you're in the back of the crowd. The pre-show happens on an elevated stage so everyone can see what's going on no matter where you are. And then you'll proceed into a theater which has plenty of seating and lots of good viewing zones. So don't worry about the pre-show. So there's not really a bad seat in the house for either Epic Universe stage show. Both theaters have bleacher seating that's stacked to make sure you're not going to be completely blocked by whoever's sitting in front of you. That being said, for the best views of both performances, I'd highly recommend aiming for the second level row of bleacher seats right behind the little divider wall. That way you really won't have to worry about anyone sitting directly in front of you. There's, generally speaking, more leg room, and you're far enough away from the stage to see everything. A lot of Epic Universe's rides have a free single rider line option that'll break up your group to fill in all the available ride seats, but will also potentially help you wait less time for a ride overall than you would have waited in the main queue. So, does it actually work? Well, 50-50. Sometimes single rider can become your best ride hack. During my last visit, I was able to use a single rider queue to get on the Mario Kart ride in 30 minutes instead of the projected standby of 180. Huge victory there. I've literally walked on to Monsters Unchained through the single rider line, even though the wait was about 60 minutes. That was super easy, although walking through that single rider line is very scary if you're all by yourself. Just a heads up. We've used the single rider line for Battle at the Ministry, which gives a 60-minute wait instead of a 120-minute wait. Smaller victory, but a victory regardless. And then we attempted to use the Minecart Madness single rider queue and ended up having to bail after standing there for a solid 15 to 20 minutes without moving an inch. If you see a single rider queue has reached capacity or is just reopened after being at capacity for a good long while, I'd be wary about jumping into that line. A single rider queue that's reached capacity means you'll basically be waiting the same amount of time, if not longer, as you would have for the main queue, so the hack part of it doesn't become such a hack anymore. Our friends over at allears.net have a few different Epic Universe videos out now where they test the different single rider lines during some of their fun challenges. So I'd recommend checking those out whenever you get the chance, just so you can get more of an idea of how successful these single rider queues can be, as well as how long they can actually get too. Okay, so lockers, they are mirrored. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about it. It's actually a brilliant concept when you're not busy being thrown off by it. You put your stuff in one side of the locker before you board a ride, and then you retrieve it on the other side of the locker after you get off. That way, there's not this whole issue of congestion over at the lockers at all times. That being said, pay attention to where you're storing your stuff because things will be mirrored after you get off the ride. For example, if you put your bags and gizmos in a locker on the far right end of the locker line before the ride, then you'll need to retrieve all your stuff from the far left end after the ride. If this gets all jumbled up in your brain, just keep an eye on the locker number section that you're currently in. If you add your stuff in locker section 1, you're going to retrieve it from locker section 1. The facial recognition technology that reopens your locker for you isn't going to open your locker if you're currently scanning your face in a section that your stuff's not in. So even if you're a little lost when it comes to which locker is yours after you get off the ride, the facial recognition will be able to open the correct locker for you just as long as you're in the correct section. So remember the section and then see which locker pops open for you. So it's one thing to say that certain snacks and entrees are really good just because the park is brand new and adrenaline is at an all-time high for guests and team members and everybody's working really hard. But it's another thing to return to a park after giving it a few months to settle in and still thinking that it's still pretty good in terms of food. And that's how I feel about Epic Universe. The food served across Epic isn't just interesting, it's pretty high quality stuff. Higher quality than what we've seen from Universal Orlando in general. And while you can book a table at one of those Celestial Park sit-down restaurants like Atlantic and the Blue Dragon, you really don't have to in order to find high-quality stuff. I think the only portal here that really suffers from okay quality cuisine is Super Nintendo World, but even then, the Nintendo snacks like the DK Crush Float from the Bubbly Barrel and those refreshing fruit smoothies from Yoshi's Snack Stand are still pretty noteworthy and still treats I would order again. Not to mention, locations that serve food in Super Nintendo World like Toadstool Cafe are very kid-focused, so even if it may not be my favorite place to eat, I can't say the same for your Nintendo-loving kid who might claim this is the best restaurant ever. But I still feel super positive, especially about the Wizarding World. I think that they've done a really good job with food in there in all the locations that serve it. So that's definitely a safe space, I think, for eating in Epic Universe. Okay, there are two big interactive purchases you can make for your Epic Universe Day. The first is a power-up band. You can use those around Super Nintendo World to collect coins and compete in mini games and save your Mario Kart scores. And the second is the second generation Wizarding World wands, which not only have new lighting effects, but also the ability to connect to your Universal Orlando app and unlock special challenges as you continue to cast spells throughout your visit. Both of these items are super unique and super cool, and unfortunately very expensive. Power-up bands are going to put you back about $40 per band, while these second-gen wands are going to cost around $85 per wand. If you want to save for one or both of these, awesome, you'll have a good time using them. But before you commit to either of those purchases, take another look at your Epic Universe itinerary priorities for your vacation and decide if you really think you're going to have the time to get your money's worth out of these. It's one thing if you have multiple days that you'll be spending in Epic Universe, or even if you're planning on coming back to Epic in the future. But if you've got a one-and-done Epic Universe day ahead of you and you're not sure when you'll be back, then you might find that these bands and wands aren't going to be worth the money you invest. Now hear me out. The first time I visited Epic Universe, I considered purchasing a power-up band from the Stella Nova Hotel gift shop just so I could have it right from the start of the day. But there was a little voice in my head telling me to hold on because I had a feeling it wasn't going to get used nearly as much as I thought it might. And sure enough, I didn't even get to the Nintendo portion of the park until like 3 p.m. And by then, all those interactive sections were crawling with excited kids that I certainly wasn't going to push to the side to scan a band of my own. So I was glad that I saved the $40 and used it on more snacky items instead, which is how I usually spend my souvenir money anyways. As far as the wand stuff is concerned, if you've been to a Universal Wizarding World before and purchased an interactive wand there, those first generation wands still work at the Ministry of Magic portal in Epic. They're just not going to connect to the Universal app, nor are they going to do all the new light effects. That being said, if that doesn't really matter all too much to you and you were really just looking to cast a few spells in the storefront windows, then you can just bring your old wand to the park and save yourself that $85 purchase. This one's going to be a quick point that Bria will break down for you because she was big on the Mario Kart ride in Super Nintendo World, and I was kind of indifferent because I don't have the same amount of appreciation for the game as she does.
Before Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, you'll see a few tutorial videos in the queue leading up to the ride itself. But it's a totally different feel once you board the ride and are actively playing the game versus watching a cartoon example of it play out on the screens. So let's go over the basics, shall we? 1. There will be 2 buttons on either side of your steering wheel, but don't stress over them doing different things. They both shoot shells, so you could press either of them or both of them at the same time if you really wanted to. 2. When you see an arrow light up in your AR goggles, turn your steering wheel in the direction it's pointing to earn more points. 3. Don't shoot your allies. It's tempting to get all turtle shell happy and shoot whatever characters you see in front of you, but you really want to aim for Bowser's little cronies and avoid aiming for your fellow teammates, like Mario, Peach, Luigi, the good guys. 4. You do not have an endless supply of shells to shoot. You can only shoot shells when you run over those question blocks to collect more. So if you're wondering why your steering wheel shooting buttons are no longer working, it's because you ran out of shells. 5. There are 2 endings for this ride. Either Team Mario will win, that's you guys, or Team Bowser will win, which means you've been defeated. To help make sure your team gets the good ending, try to at least collect 100 coins before making it to the end. This still might not guarantee a victory for your vehicle, but it sure will help. And 6, if you're confused about which shell color is yours, look down at your steering wheel while wearing your AR goggles. The AR screen will show you your shell color as well as how many coins you've collected so far.
Okay, I'm back. Now, if you're desperately trying to find times on your Universal Orlando app for the Cosmos Fountain show that happens at Epic Universe at the end of the day, let me save you the grief. You're gonna come up dry. And yes, that is water humor. The Cosmos Fountains in Celestial Park have little shows all day long, but the big one with all the lights and the music and the epicness happens right at the end of the night. But the Universal app isn't gonna tell you that, so you're just gonna have to look at when the park hours are on the day of your visit and know that normally the big water and light show starts up about 10 minutes before park closing. But if you want to double check and make absolutely sure you're not going to miss this, you can always ask a nearby Celestial Park team member for confirmation. While Epic Universe closes all its portals around 9 or 10 p.m., depending on when you visit, Celestial Park's main shops and even many of their snack locations will stay open an extra hour after that, just like all the shops and stuff do in Disney World. So if you think your feet will allow you to spend one more hour inside Epic Universe before you can collapse on your hotel bed, you can always save those Celestial Park stores until the very end of the day instead of worrying about them while you're in the middle of your one Epic Universe day. Now, who knew there'd be so much more to learn about Epic Universe on top of what we've already covered earlier this year? Well, we did. And if you follow DFB Guide, you know that we're always learning new stuff and we're always going to share it with you. If you haven't seen some of our past Epic videos, I definitely recommend jumping over to a few real quick, especially our best things to eat in Epic Universe, which is one of our favorite Epic videos to make so far. And don't forget to download that free Epic Universe guide right now over at disneyfoodblog.com/epic. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks for watching. As always, this is AJ for Disney Food Blog, and I'll see you real soon.